I'll help you. Wait for me. A youthful voice cuts through the roar of the storm. Rain falls on Lake Tahoe as Graham Sinclair's Tesla crashes through the guardrail, a mysterious explosion shredding the tires. The tech billionaire is stunned, trapped as icy water floods the cabin. Zora, a 10-year-old black orphan mentored by librarian Lena in a STEM club, watches from her makeshift shelter. "Stay awake, Uncle! I'll get you out!" she screams, sprinting toward the sinking car. Seeing a cracked window, she dives in, uses a metal stylus to disconnect the seatbelt buckle, and frees Graham just before the car sinks. They collapse, gasping on shore, their fates intertwined. Where are you watching? Subscribe to see our latest videos and share this story. Who sabotaged Graham's car? Can a homeless girl's courage topple a tech empire? Follow Zora's extraordinary journey. The storm over Lake Tahoe roared like a living beast, its rain hammering the asphalt with unrelenting fury, turning the road into a slick, treacherous mirror. Graham Sinclair, 42 tech billionaire and CEO of Syntech, clenched the wheel of his Tesla Model X, his knuckles pale against the dark leather. His mind wasn't on the perilous curves, but on the venomous smirk of Noel Carver, his rival, who'd mocked Syntech's latest technology venture at a boardroom showdown hours earlier. Noel, head of Carver Dynamics, wasn't just a competitor, he was a predator, his ambition to dominate the tech industry fueled by stolen ideas and ruthless sabotage. Their feud ran deep, a tangle of betrayed trust and veiled threats. Graham's jaw tightened, his foot pressing harder on the accelerator, the wipers slashing uselessly against the deluge. A thunderous boom split the night. The front right tire erupted, not from a stray nail but from a precise, malicious device. A bomb, engineered for destruction. The Tesla veered wildly, tires shrieking, and before Graham could react, it smashed through the guardrail with a bone-jarring crunch. The world spun. Metal screamed as the car plunged into Lake Tahoe's icy depths, the water claiming it with a ravenous hiss. Inside, Graham's head cracked against the window, blood seeping from a gash above his brow. The seatbelt held him fast, a cruel shackle as frigid water poured through the fractured windshield, flooding the cabin. His vision dimmed, consciousness slipping like sand through his fingers. He was sinking, trapped, alone. Beneath a sagging tarp stretched between two pines, 10-year-old Zora crouched, her patched clothes damp from the storm's relentless assault. The black orphan girl, hardened by years of survival, watched Tesla's headlights spiral into chaos before the crash. Life had taught her to see everything: hunger, cruelty, the world's cold indifference. But a car diving into the lake was new. Her sharp brown eyes, trained to miss nothing, locked onto the sinking vehicle. Her pulse quickened, not with panic, but with a fierce clarity. She learned to act, not falter, under the gentle guidance of Lena, the librarian who ran the Tahoe Public Library's STEM club. Lena had fed Zora's hungry mind with videos on wiring, mechanics, anything the girl craved. One video about Tesla's electrical systems burned bright in her memory now. "Stay awake, mister. I'm getting you out." Zora's voice sliced through the storm, small but unyielding. She bolted across the muddy bank, her sneakers skidding on slick rocks. The Tesla was half submerged, its nose dipping deeper as water surged inside. Zora waded into the freezing lake, gasping as the cold clawed at her skin. Through the cracked passenger window, she saw Graham slumped, blood streaking his face, his breath shallow. Water lapped at his chest, the car sinking faster. Her eyes darted to the dashboard. Faint lights flickered, proof that the electrical system still lived. That library video flashed back. Tesla's seatbelt lock could be overridden with a short circuit if you knew the right spot. "I will help you. It will be quick," Zora shouted, her words a lifeline against the wind's howl. She fished a metal pen from her jacket, a gift from Lena for scribbling notes at STEM Club. Scrambling onto the hood, she leaned through the cracked window, water soaking her to the bone. Her fingers, trembling yet precise, pried open the central console beside the driver's seat. The panel gave way, revealing a nest of wires. Zora's gaze narrowed, hunting for the two contact points from the video. There, two metal nodes glinting faintly in the dashboard's dying glow. She jammed the pen across them, sparks crackling as the circuit shorted. A soft click sounded. The seatbelt snapped free, releasing Graham's limp body. The car shuddered, sinking deeper. Zora seized Graham's jacket, her small frame straining against his weight. "Move!" she growled, tugging with every ounce of strength. The water reached her shoulders, the current pulling like a living thing. Her feet slipped on the Tesla's slick interior, but she braced against the doorframe, hauling Graham through the window. He was heavy, a dead weight, but Zora's will was forged in fire. She kicked toward the surface, dragging him upward, her lungs screaming. They broke free, gasping, as the Tesla vanished into the lake's black heart with a final, mournful gurgle. Zora dragged Graham onto the muddy shore, collapsing beside him. His chest rose faintly, blood mingling with rain on his pale face. "Don't die," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. Headlights pierced the darkness. Locals, roused by the crash's clamor, hurried toward them. "Help! Here!" Zora called, her voice raw but steady. A man in a yellow raincoat knelt first, checking Graham's pulse. "He's alive," he said, fumbling for his phone to call an ambulance. Others arrived, draping a coarse blanket over Zora's shivering shoulders, but their glances carried suspicion, not gratitude. "Who's this kid?" one murmured, eyeing her ragged clothes. As sirens wailed closer, Graham stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Through a haze of pain, he saw Zora's face, fierce, soaked, a stranger who'd defied death for him. "You saved me," he rasped, voice barely a threat against the storm. Zora met his gaze, her expression guarded, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Had to," she said simply, then stepped back as paramedics descended. They swarmed Graham, his tailored suit marking him as the priority, scarcely noticing the trembling girl who'd snatched him from the abyss. An ambulance swept him away, its red beacon fading into the rain. Zora melted into the shadows, her sneakers squelching as she retreated to her tarp. Thanks weren't her currency. She'd learned long ago that people like her were ghosts, unseen, unvalued. But as she curled up, the metal pen still warm in her palm, a quiet spark flickered within her. Maybe this man was different. Maybe her courage had set something in motion, something vast and unstoppable. Behind her, Lake Tahoe churned, cradling the wreckage of a car, and the first thread of a conspiracy that would shake the world. The sterile hum of Tahoe Forest Hospital was a far cry from Lake Tahoe's raging storm, but Graham Sinclair felt the chaos still churning within him. Propped up in a crisp bed, bandages tight around his fractured ribs, he stared at the ceiling, the gash on his temple throbbing. The crash replayed in his mind, the tire's explosion, the car's sickening plunge, the icy water swallowing him whole. Yet it wasn't the sabotage, likely Noel Carver's doing, his rival at Carver Dynamics, that haunted him most. It was her, the girl, small, fierce, her voice cutting through the deluge. "I will help you. It will be quick." She'd saved him, a stranger, then vanished like a ghost into the rain. Graham, tech billionaire and Syntech CEO, wasn't used to mysteries he couldn't solve. But this girl was an enigma wrapped in courage. "Find her," he told his assistant Clara, her heels clicking as she entered his room. Clara's arched brow betrayed skepticism, but Graham's tone brooked no argument. "A black girl, maybe 10, ragged clothes, saved my life. I need to know who she is." Clara nodded, already dialing a private investigator, though her pursed lips suggested she thought it a whim born of concussion. Graham didn't care. He owed the girl more than gratitude. Her act had shaken something loose in him, a crack in the polished armor of a man who'd built an empire on logic and control. The investigator, a grizzled man named Holt, delivered grim news by noon. The tire's rupture wasn't accidental. A compact explosive, military grade, had shredded it. "This wasn't a prank," Holt said, sliding photos of the salvaged wreckage across the bed. "Someone wanted you dead." Graham's jaw tightened. Noel Carver's face flashed in his mind. His smug grin at their last meeting, vowing to crush Syntech in the race for tech supremacy. Carver Dynamics had long played dirty, poaching talent, stealing patents, but this was a new low. Graham's empire was built on innovation, Knowles on sabotage. The crash was a declaration of war, and Graham needed answers, starting with the girl who'd thwarted Knowles' plan. Discharged against doctor's orders, Graham leaned on a cane, pain flaring with each step as he directed Holt to scour South Lake Tahoe. "She's out there," he insisted, picturing her soaked figure on the shore. Holt traced witnesses from the crash, locals who'd seen a small girl, maybe homeless, slip away before paramedics could question her. "Street kids don't trust adults," Holt grunted. "If she's smart, she's lying low." Graham's gut twisted. Homeless? At 10? The thought clashed with the image of her precision, short-circuiting his seatbelt with a metal pen like a seasoned engineer. 3 days later, Holt called. "Found her. Tahoe Public Library, kids section. Matches your description." Graham's pulse quickened. Ignoring Clara's protests, he drove to the library, the lake's glassy surface glinting outside, a stark contrast to the night it nearly claimed him. The library was a warm, quiet haven, its shelves heavy with books and secrets. At a corner table, buried in a technical manual on automotive wiring, sat Zora. Her patched jacket hung loose, her braids frayed, but her eyes, sharp, unyielding, scanned the pages with a hunger that struck Graham like lightning. This was no ordinary child. "Excuse me," Graham said softly, easing into a chair across from her. Zora's gaze snapped up, wary, her hand slipping the metal pen into her pocket like a weapon. "You're the man from the lake," she said, voice low, no trace of fear. Graham nodded, studying her. "You saved my life. Why?" Zora shrugged, her guard unyielding. "Couldn't just watch you drown." Her simplicity disarmed him, but her eyes held depths. Years of surviving a world that didn't see her. Graham's chest tightened. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zora," she replied, hesitant, as if names were a currency she rarely spent. He learned fragments. Zora, orphaned at 6 when her mother, a coder, died of illness. She'd fled foster homes, their promises hollow, surviving on wits and what she called library tricks. Lena, the librarian, had been her anchor, running a STEM club where Zora devoured videos on mechanics, electronics, knowledge that saved Graham's life. "Lena says learning's free," Zora said, a faint pride in her voice. Graham glanced at Lena, a middle-aged woman shelving books nearby, her warm smile confirming Zora's story. The metal pen, Lena's gift, gleamed in Zora's hand, a symbol of her ingenuity. "I want to help you," Graham said, leaning forward. "Come to my home, just for a few days. You deserve better than the streets." Zora's eyes narrowed, suspicion etched deep. "I don't need charity," she snapped, her voice ablaze. Graham held her gaze undeterred. "It's not charity, it's a debt I owe." Zora studied him, weighing his sincerity against a lifetime of broken trust. Finally she nodded, a single reluctant dip of her chin. "A few days," she said, rising, clutching her worn backpack. "That's it." As they left the library, Graham's cane tapped the floor, pain radiating from his ribs. Zora walked beside him, silent, her eyes scanning the street like a sentinel. He didn't push her to talk. Her silence spoke volumes, a tapestry of resilience woven from loss. But questions burned in him. How did a 10-year-old learn to short-circuit a Tesla? Why risk her life for a stranger? And deeper, darker, who planted that bomb? And what did Noel Carver stand to gain? The lake's calm surface outside belied the storm brewing. A war between tech titans, with Zora, unknowingly, at its heart. Graham's Tesla, another, not the sunken wreck, waited outside, its sleek lines a stark contrast to Zora's tattered world. She hesitated, then climbed in, her backpack hugged tight. As they drove toward his lakeside mansion, Graham stole a glance at her. She stared out the window, the pen twirling in her fingers, a flicker of something, hope, maybe, crossing her face. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one truth was clear. Zora wasn't just a girl who'd saved him. She was a force, a spark in the dark, and whatever came next, their paths were bound together, forged in the icy depths of Lake Tahoe. The glass walls of Graham Sinclair's Lake Tahoe mansion gleamed like a frozen wave, perched on a cliff overlooking the lake's restless expanse. Zora, clutching her tattered backpack, stepped from the Tesla into a world as alien as a distant planet. The air inside was crisp, scented with cedar and money, a far cry from the damp chill of her tarp shelter. At 10, she'd seen enough to know wealth didn't mean warmth, and the mansion's stark minimalism, white marble, chrome accents, vast empty spaces, felt more like a museum than a home. Graham, leaning on his cane, ribs aching from the crash 3 days prior, watched her hesitate at the threshold. "Welcome, Zora," he said, his voice soft but earnest. Her sharp brown eyes, honed by years of survival, scanned the atrium, wary as a deer sensing a trap. The housekeeper, Helen, a wiry woman with a tight bun, greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Sinclair, the guest room's ready," she said, her gaze flickering over Zora's frayed jacket, lips pursing as if the girl carried dirt in her very presence. Zora caught the look. She'd seen it before, from shopkeepers, cops, foster parents who saw only a problem, not a person. "I won't break anything," she muttered, her voice low, defiant. Helen's smile stiffened, and Graham's jaw twitched. But he said nothing, guiding Zora toward a staircase that seemed to float in midair. The silence was heavy, broken only by the tap of his cane and the faint hum of the mansion's unseen systems. Zora's room was a revelation. A vast bed with linen soft as clouds, a desk gleaming with a computer she'd only dreamed of in Lena's library STEM club. Yet it felt wrong, too perfect, like a stage set for someone else. She dropped her backpack by the door, keeping the metal pen, Lena's gift, her lifeline from the crash, in her pocket. Graham lingered, sensing her unease. "You're safe here," he said. Zora met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Safe's not the same as belonging," she replied, her words cutting sharper than she intended. Graham nodded undeterred. "Give it time," he said, then left her to the room's oppressive quiet. Dinner was a battlefield of whispers. At the polished oak table, Helen served grilled salmon and asparagus, her movements precise, but her glances at Zora loaded with suspicion. Clara, Graham's assistant, joined them, her tailored blazer a stark contrast to Zora's patched clothes. "So Zora," Clara began, her tone syrupy, "where did you learn to tinker with cars?" The question dripped with condescension, as if a homeless girl couldn't possibly know a Tesla's wiring. Zora's grip tightened on her fork. "Library," she said flatly. "Videos. Lena's STEM club." Clara's smile faltered, but Helen's soft scoff echoed from the kitchen. Graham's eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, a sharp beep cut through the tension. The mansion's control panel, mounted on the dining room wall, flashed red, a glitch in its automated systems, lights flickering erratically. Helen rushed in, flustered. "It's been doing this all week," she said, jabbing buttons to no avail. Zora's eyes flicked to the panel, her mind racing. She'd seen similar setups in Lena's videos on smart home tech. "Can I try?" she asked, standing before anyone could object. Graham nodded, curious, while Helen's lips thinned. Zora approached the panel, her small fingers dancing over the touchscreen. She navigated menus with eerie confidence, recalling a video on circuit diagnostics. Within minutes, she isolated a faulty relay, rerouting power with a few taps. The light steadied, the beep silenced. Helen stared, stunned, as Clara's forced smile cracked. "You fixed it," Graham said, his voice warm with awe. Zora shrugged, returning to her seat. "Just a bad connection," she said, but her heart pounded. She'd shown them, yet their silence felt heavier than their doubts. Helen's whisper to Clara as they cleared plates, "Street kids, always trouble," reached Zora's ears, a sting sharper than the cold of Lake Tahoe. She pushed her food away, appetite gone. Graham caught her expression, his own darkening. "Helen," he called sharply, "Zora's my guest. Treat her as such." Helen flushed, muttering an apology, but the damage was done. Zora's walls, briefly lowered, rose higher. Later, alone in her room, Zora sat on the floor, back against the bed she couldn't bring herself to touch. The computer tempted her, but she pulled out a worn notebook instead, sketching circuits from memory. Lena's lessons, her refuge. A knock startled her. Graham stood at the door, holding a mug of cocoa. "Couldn't sleep," he said, offering it. Zora took it warily, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice low. "You don't owe me." Graham sat on the desk chair, wincing as his ribs protested. "You saved my life," and he said. "But it's more than that. You're extraordinary. I want to give you a chance." Zora's eyes searched his, probing for lies. Finding none, she nodded, a small crack in her armor. The next morning, Graham met with his lawyer, Miss Patel, in his sleek office overlooking the lake. "I want temporary guardianship," he said, voice firm. "Zora's alone, brilliant, but the systems failed her." Patel frowned, adjusting her glasses. "She's a ward of the state. It's complicated. Foster records, background checks." Graham's gaze hardened. "Make it happen." Patel sighed, sensing his resolve. "I'll start the process, but it's a long road." Graham nodded, his mind already racing to Holt's latest report. The bomb was traced to a shell company linked to Carver Dynamics. Knowles' war on Syntech was escalating, and Zora, unknowingly, had stepped into its crosshairs. Back in her room, Zora stood at the window, Lake Tahoe stretching below like a dark promise. The mansion's luxury pressed against her, alien and cold. But Graham's words lingered. "A chance," he'd said. She twirled the metal pen, its weight grounding her. Lena had taught her to seize knowledge. Maybe, just maybe, she could seize this too. But trust was a fragile thing, and Zora knew better than most how quickly it could shatter. Outside, the lake whispered secrets. Of bombs, of rivals. Of a girl who'd changed everything with a spark of courage. The dawn light sliced through the glass walls of Graham Sinclair's Lake Tahoe mansion, casting long shadows across the marble floor where Zora stood, staring at the lake's restless surface. A week had passed since she'd left her tarp shelter, yet the mansion's luxury still felt like a cage, its opulence a constant reminder she didn't belong. At 10, Zora knew the world's sharp edges, hunger, betrayal, the sidelong glances of those who saw her as less. But Graham's quiet insistence that she stay, coupled with the warmth of his cocoa-fueled talks, had chipped at her defenses. She twirled the metal pen, Lena's gift from the library's STEM club, in her fingers, its weight grounding her as she navigated this strange new world. Downstairs, Graham's voice, low and urgent, drifted from his office, a storm brewing beneath his calm. Graham, ribs still tender from the crash, hunched over his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Holt, the private investigator, delivered a bombshell. The explosive that shredded his Tesla's tire was traced to a shell company tied to Carver Dynamics. Noel Carver, Graham's rival, wasn't just playing dirty, he was waging war. Their feud, rooted in years of stolen patents and corporate espionage, had escalated to attempted murder. Noel's goal was clear, to cripple Syntech and seize control of the tech industry, where Graham's innovations threatened Carver Dynamics' dominance. "He's bought a stake in a military contractor," Holt said, voice gritty. "High-end explosives, off-the-books deals. This guy's not stopping." Graham's jaw clenched, the memory of Zora's voice. "I will help you. It will be quick." Flashing through him, she'd saved him from Noel's first strike. Now he needed to strike back. "Get me everything," Graham told Holt, hanging up. He limped to the window, Lake Tahoe glinting below, its depths hiding the wreckage of his car, and secrets. The Tesla's black box, if recovered, might hold data on the bomb's trigger. But salvage teams needed time, and time was a luxury Noel wouldn't grant. Graham's lawyer, Ms. Patel, had warned him. Guardianship papers for Zora were stalled by bureaucratic red tape, her foster records a maze of neglect. Protecting Zora meant keeping her close, but the mansion's walls couldn't shield her from the prejudice simmering within. Helen's whispers, Clara's veiled barbs. Zora endured them with a stoic grace that both awed and pained him. At breakfast, Zora sat across from Graham, picking at her toast. The control panel she'd fixed days ago hummed smoothly, a quiet victory over Helen's doubts. Graham, sensing her restlessness, shared a sliver of his burden. "The crash wasn't an accident," he said, voice low. "Someone planted a bomb." Zora's eyes, sharp as ever, met his. "You know who," she said, not a question. Graham nodded, wary of burdening her, but her mind was already racing. "What about the car's GPS?" she asked, twirling her pen. Log everything: speed, signals, interference. Lena showed us a video on black boxes. Graham froze, struck by her clarity. A child, yet she'd cut through his fog. "You're right," he said, a spark of hope igniting. He called Holt, ordering the salvage team to prioritize the GPS data. The day's tension peaked at a dinner party Graham hosted, a strategic move to rally syntech investors against Knoll's growing influence. Zora, dressed in a simple sweater Helen had grudgingly provided, stood out among the glittering crowd of suits and sequins. The guests, tech moguls, financiers, murmured as she entered, their smiles tight, eyes appraising her like a curiosity. Mrs. Elaine Harper, a venture capitalist's wife, leaned toward Clara, her voice carrying, "Graham's new project, is she? Very charitable." Zora's grip on her pen tightened, her face a mask of composure learned from years on the streets. Graham, overhearing, felt a flare of anger, but kept his cool, guiding Zora to a seat beside him. The conversation turned to Syntech's future, but Elaine's gaze lingered on Zora. "Dear, how do you like this grand house?" she asked, her tone syrupy, as if Zora were a pet. "It's fine," Zora said flatly, her voice cutting through the condescension. Elaine pressed, undeterred. "And what do you do besides helping Mr. Sinclair?" The table quieted, sensing sport. Zora's eyes flicked to Graham, then back. "I fix things," she said, calm but firm. "Like his control panel. Wiring's easy if you know circuits." Elaine's smile faltered, a murmur rippling through the guests. Clara coughed, deflecting with a toast, but the damage was done. Zora's quiet defiance had exposed their bias, and Graham's pride in her swelled. After dinner, as guests mingled, Zora slipped to the balcony, the lake's dark expanse mirroring her unease. Graham found her, his cane tapping softly. "You held your own," he said, leaning against the railing. Zora shrugged, her pen twirling faster. "They don't see me," she said, voice low. "They see a story they've already written." Graham's chest ached, not from his ribs, but from the truth in her words. "I see you," he said, meeting her gaze. Zora studied him, her walls still high, but a flicker of trust stirred. "You're fighting someone big, aren't you?" she asked. Graham nodded, thinking of Knoll's cold ambition. "Bigger than me, maybe, but not bigger than us." That night, Holt sent a report. The Tesla's GPS data, freshly recovered, showed a brief signal interference seconds before the explosion, traced to a tower near Carver Dynamics headquarters. Graham stared at the evidence, his resolve hardening. Knoll had struck once, he'd strike again. Zora's suggestion had cracked the case open, her mind a beacon in the dark. In her room, Zora lay awake, the pen resting on her notebook, sketches of circuits sprawling across the pages. The mansion's luxury pressed against her, but Graham's words, "not bigger than us," echoed. She didn't trust easily, but for the first time, she wondered if she could. Outside, Lake Tahoe whispered, its secrets stirring, as the seeds of suspicion took root in a war far from over. The twilight over Lake Tahoe painted the sky in bruise-like purples, its restless waters mirroring the tension coiled in Zora's chest. 2 weeks had passed since she'd traded her tarp shelter for Graham Sinclair's glass mansion. Yet the opulence still felt like a borrowed skin. At 10, Zora knew trust was a fragile thread. But Graham's quiet faith in her, his nod when she'd suggested checking the Tesla's GPS, had woven a tentative bond. Tonight he'd insisted on dinner at the Lakeview Bistro, a sleek restaurant perched on the shore, to celebrate her acceptance into a local STEM program. Zora, in a new sweater that felt stiff against her skin, clutched her metal pen. Lena's gift from the library's STEM club, as they stepped into the bistro's warm glow, the clink of glasses and murmurs of wealth enveloping them. Graham, his cane retired but ribs still tender from the crash, guided Zora to a window table, the lake's dark expanse framing their reflection. His smile was genuine, a rare crack in the armor of a tech billionaire whose empire, Syntech, teetered under Noel Carver's shadow. Noel's sabotage, the bomb that sent Graham's Tesla plunging into the lake, had been a warning shot, confirmed by the GPS data Zora's insight had unlocked. Holt's report traced the signal to Carver Dynamics, Noel's ruthless bid to dominate the tech industry by eliminating his rival. Graham hadn't shared the full danger with Zora, but her sharp mind caught the weight in his silences. "You're still after him," she said, twirling her pen. Graham's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect. "He won't stop," he admitted, voice low. "But neither will I." Their meal, herbed chicken for Zora, steak for Graham, arrived, the aroma a fleeting comfort as the bistro buzzed with patrons. Zora's gaze wandered, her street-honed instincts scanning faces. Across the room a man entered, his presence commanding. Tailored suit, silver hair, a smile sharp as a blade. Noel Carver. Her breath caught, the pen pausing mid-twirl. Graham followed her stare, his fork halting. "Stay calm," he whispered. But Zora's pulse raced. Noel, flanked by two men in dark suits, settled at a corner table, his laughter cutting through the din. Zora's eyes narrowed. She'd learned to read people, and Noel's ease screamed danger. Midway through dessert, Noel rose, phone in hand, and stepped onto the outdoor patio, the glass door sliding shut behind him. Zora's curiosity, sharpened by Lena's STEM club lessons in observation, flared. "I need air," she muttered, slipping from her chair before Graham could protest. She edged toward the patio, her small frame unnoticed amid the restaurant's bustle, the pen now a talisman in her pocket. Crouching behind a potted fern, she caught Noel's voice, low and venomous. "Sinclair's still breathing. Set another bomb. His tech launch is next week. Make it final." Her heart thundered, the words searing into her memory. Noel's plan wasn't just sabotage, it was murder, a strike to bury Syntech and Crown Carver Dynamics supreme. Zora slipped back to the table, her face composed but eyes blazing. Graham leaned forward, sensing her urgency. "What is it?" he asked, voice barely audible. Zora glanced around, then whispered, "Noel's planning another bomb. At your tech launch. I heard him. Outside." Graham's jaw tightened, but he didn't doubt her. Her precision, honed by Lena's drills and recalling circuit diagrams, spilled out. He said, "Make it final. Talk to someone on the phone. 6:42 p.m. Graham's hand gripped the table, his mind racing. Zora's words were a lifeline, her courage a shield against Noel's malice. "You're sure?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Zora nodded, her pen tapping softly, a rhythm of resolve. Back at the mansion, Graham's office became a war room. He called Holt, who patched in an FBI contact, Agent Ruiz. Zora sat nearby, sketching the patio's layout in her notebook, her memory photographic. "The phone was a burner," she said, recalling Noel's grip. "Black, no case." Ruiz, on speaker, was skeptical. "A kid heard this?" he asked. Graham's voice hardened. "This kid saved my life. Trust her." Zora's cheeks warmed, but she stayed focused, detailing Noel's words, the timing, the men at his table. Ruiz relented, intrigued by her clarity. "We'll monitor Carver," he said. "If he's planning a bomb, we'll need hard evidence." Graham ended the call, turning to Zora. "You've given us a chance," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. Alone in her room, Zora stood at the window, Lake Tahoe's darkness pressing against the glass. The STEM program acceptance letter lay unopened on her desk. She hadn't dared hope it was real. Noel's voice echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the stakes. She'd faced danger before, street nights, foster home cruelties, but this was different, a shadow cast by greed and power. Her pen traced circuits in her notebook, a reflex from Lena's lessons, but her thoughts were on Graham. He'd believed her, no questions asked. Trust so long a stranger stirred within her, fragile but growing. Graham, in his office, stared at Holt's latest report. Noel's military contractor had supplied explosives to untraceable buyers. The tech launch, Syntech's showcase of a groundbreaking platform, was Noel's target, a chance to destroy Graham and seize market control. Zora's eavesdropping had cracked the plot wide open, her bravery a beacon in the storm. He glanced at a photo on his desk, Ms. Patel's guardianship papers still pending. Protecting Zora meant more than a roof. It meant shielding her from Noel's war. Outside, the lake churned, its secrets deepening as the fateful encounter at the bistro set a collision course with destiny. The Tahoe Convention Center pulsed with anticipation, its glass facade aglow under the crisp night sky. Inside Syntech's tech launch, a showcase of a revolutionary platform, drew hundreds. Tech moguls, journalists, investors, all buzzing with the promise of innovation. Graham Sinclair, ribs nearly healed from the Lake Tahoe crash 3 weeks prior, stood backstage, his tailored suit masking the storm within. Noel Carver's shadow loomed large, his plot to bomb this event, overheard by Zora at the bistro, a blade poised at Syntech's throat. Graham's gamble, leaking a rumor of a game-changing reveal, had baited Noel into action, with the FBI lying in wait. Yet Zora, the 10-year-old who'd saved him from a sinking Tesla, was safely at home, or so he thought. Her voice, "I will help you, it will be quick," echoed in his mind, a beacon of courage he clung to. Zora, however, had no intention of staying behind. The mansion's sterile luxury, even with Graham's trust, couldn't cage her restless spirit. Noel's chilling words, "Make it final," had seared into her a threat to the man who'd given her a chance. Slipping past Helen's watchful eye, Zora trekked to the convention center, her patched jacket blending into the night. Her metal pen, Lena's gift from the library's STEM club, tucked in her pocket, she navigated the shadows, her street-honed instincts sharp. The center's main entrance swarmed with security, but Zora spotted a loading dock, its bay doors ajar as workers hauled equipment. Donning a discarded tarp like a poncho, she slipped through, a ghost among the chaos, driven by a fire Lena had kindled. Knowledge was power, and Zora wielded it like a blade. Inside, the loading area thrummed with activity, crates of sound gear, cables snaking across the floor. Zora's eyes, trained by Lena's videos on circuitry, scanned for anything amiss. A black case, unmarked and tucked near the audio control room, caught her gaze. Her pulse quickened. Noel's bomb was here. She knew it. Crouching, she pried it open with her pen, revealing a device with a blinking timer. 7 minutes. Her breath hitched, but panic was a luxury she'd never afforded. A YouTube video from Lena's STEM club flashed back. Basic bomb wiring, a primer for curiosity, not heroics. "Red wire trigger circuit," she whispered, her fingers steady. With the pen's tip, she snipped the wire, the timer freezing at 4:32. The bomb was dead, but Zora's work wasn't. She'd brought a tool from Graham's lab, a tiny recorder, learned via a library video on surveillance. Spotting a worker in a dark jacket, one of Noel's men from the bistro, she slipped the device into his pocket as he barked orders nearby, her small frame invisible to his arrogance. The recorder, activated via Graham's old phone, which Zora had borrowed, captured every word. She retreated to a shadowed corner, heart pounding, and sent the audio file to Graham's number, her fingers flying over the cracked screen. The file held Noel's voice, relayed through his lackey. "Carver says no mistakes. Syntech burns tonight." Zora's pen tapped her palm, a rhythm of defiance. On stage, Graham addressed the crowd, his voice steady despite the weight of Noel's threat. His phone buzzed, Zora's message. His blood ran cold, recognizing her number, but he opened the file, feeding it to the tech team backstage. The audio boomed through the center's speakers, Noel's damning words echoing, "Syntech burns tonight." Gasps rippled through the audience, cameras flashing. Graham seized the moment, his voice thunderous. "This is Carver Dynamics' true face. Treachery, not innovation." The crowd erupted, journalists scrambling, as FBI agents, led by Agent Ruiz, moved through the chaos. Zora, hidden near the loading dock, saw Noel, his silver hair unmistakable, slip toward an exit, his composure cracking. Graham's team found the disarmed bomb, the metal pen left beside it, a signal only he'd understand. "Zora," he whispered, fear and pride warring within. He rushed to the loading dock, spotting her crouched behind a crate, safe but wide-eyed. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said, pulling her close. Zora shrugged, her voice steady. "Couldn't let him win." Outside, Ruiz's team cornered Noel, his protests drowned by the audio, now viral on social media. Handcuffs clicked, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own words. Charges loomed: attempted murder, corporate fraud, conspiracy to destroy Syntech's bid for tech dominance. Backstage, Graham knelt before Zora, the crowd's roar fading. "You saved me again," he said, voice thick. Zora twirled her pen, her gaze meeting his. We saved each other, she corrected, a flicker of trust softening her guard. The recorder, still in the worker's pocket, was recovered by the FBI, its evidence ironclad. Zora's memory, sharpened by Lena's stem drills, had noted every detail. The worker's jacket, the case's placement, sealing Noel's fate. Graham's hand rested on her shoulder, a silent vow to protect her, not just from bombs, but from a world that underestimated her. In her guest room later, Zora sat cross-legged, sketching the bomb's wiring in her notebook, the pen's scratches a quiet triumph. The mansion's luxury still pressed against her, but Graham's belief felt like home. Lena's lessons had armed her, not just with knowledge but with purpose. Noel's arrest was a victory, but Zora sensed the war wasn't over. His kind never surrendered easily. Downstairs, Graham pored over Holt's report. Noel's military contractor ties ran deeper, a web of corruption threatening more than Syntech. Zora's courage had turned the tables, but the board was reset, the next move uncertain. Outside, Lake Tahoe churned, its secrets unbroken, as a girl and a billionaire braced for battles yet to come. The morning sun spilled through the glass walls of Graham Sinclair's Lake Tahoe mansion, bathing the marble atrium in a golden warmth that felt, for the first time, like home. Zora, now 10 and a half, stood at the foot of the floating staircase, her patched backpack replaced by a new one, her fingers twirling the metal pen, Lena's gift from the library's STEM club. A month had passed since she'd disarmed Noel Carver's bomb at Syntech's tech launch, her courage turning the tables on a man who'd sought to bury Graham's empire. Noel's arrest, charged with attempted murder and corporate fraud, had shaken the tech world. But for Zora, the real seismic shift was here, in this house, where trust, once a stranger, was taking root. Graham's voice, steady and warm, called from his office. Zora, it's time. Graham, fully healed from the crash that had bound their fates, stood beside Ms. Patel, his lawyer, with a stack of papers on his desk. The guardianship battle had been brutal. Zora's foster records, a litany of neglect, had fueled bureaucratic skepticism. But Graham's wealth, paired with testimonials from Lena and the FBI's Agent Ruiz, who'd witnessed Zora's heroics, tipped the scales. Sign here, Ms. Patel said, her smile softening as Zora entered. The adoption papers, crisp and final, named Graham as Zora's legal guardian, with full adoption pending. Zora's eyes, sharp yet guarded, scanned the documents. This means I stay? She asked, voice low, as if daring to hope. Graham knelt, meeting her gaze. Forever, if you want. Zora nodded, a flicker of relief cracking her stoic mask, and signed, her pen scratches a quiet vow. The victory was bittersweet. Zora's new life, marked by a bedroom now cluttered with books and a computer humming with her sketches, clashed with the world's sharp edges. Her first day at Tahoe Preparatory, a private school Graham had enrolled her in, loomed like a storm. At breakfast, Helen, the housekeeper, served oatmeal, her once suspicious glances softened by Zora's triumph over Noel. You'll do fine, Helen said, a rare warmth in her tone. Zora shrugged, her pen tapping the table. They'll hate me, she muttered, recalling the bistro's sneers, the dinner party's condescension. Graham, sipping coffee, leaned forward. They'll see you, he said, echoing their balcony talk. Show them who you are. Tahoe Prep's polished halls, lined with lockers and privilege, were a gauntlet. Zora, in a new uniform that felt like a costume, drew stares, her black braids, her quiet intensity, marking her as an outsider. In her first STEM class, Mr. Kessler, a stern teacher with wire-rimmed glasses, assigned a coding project, design a simple app. Zora, armed with Lena's library lessons, crafted a math tutoring app, its interface sleek, its logic flawless. She presented it confidently, her voice steady, but Kessler's brow furrowed. This is advanced, he said, his tone laced with doubt. Did you have help? The accusation stung, whispers rippling through the class. Zora's grip on her pen tightened, her eyes blazing. I built it myself, she said, voice cutting like glass. Test it. Kessler, pressured by her defiance, ran the app on the classroom projector. It worked perfectly, solving equations with speed and clarity. The class fell silent, some students nodding, others averting their eyes. Kessler, red-faced, muttered, "Impressive," but stopped short of an apology. Zora returned to her seat, heart pounding, Lena's words echoing, "Knowledge is your shield." That evening, she told Graham, her voice steady but raw. He listened, his jaw tight, then called the school's headmaster, ensuring Kessler's bias was addressed. "You proved them wrong," Graham said, pride in his eyes. Zora nodded, a spark of confidence kindling within. The week's end brought a deeper revelation. Graham, digging into Noel's crimes, uncovered a buried file at Carver Dynamics. Zora's mother, Amara, a coder, had developed a groundbreaking algorithm there, only for Noel to steal it, stalling her career. Her death from illness, when Zora was 6, had left her daughter on the streets. Graham's chest ached. Amara's fate mirrored the systemic barriers Zora faced. Over dinner, he shared his plan. A scholarship fund in Amara's name, funding STEM education for Black youth. "Your mom deserved better," he said, passing Zora a draft proposal. Zora's eyes, usually guarded, shimmered. "She'd like that," she whispered, her pen pausing mid-twirl, a rare vulnerability surfacing. Zora's dreams shifted that night. She'd always wanted to learn, to survive, but now she saw a purpose. Teaching, like Lena, to lift others up. She sketched a new circuit in her notebook, a sensor network inspired by her bomb-disarming feat, the pen's scratches, a quiet anthem. The mansion, once a cage, felt different. Graham's laughter, Helen's softened demeanor, the hum of her computer weaving a tapestry of belonging. Yet doubt lingered. "What if I don't fit?" she asked Graham the next morning, her voice small. He knelt, his hand on her shoulder. "You make the world fit you," he said, echoing her own defiance. Graham's office held its own battles. Holt's latest report revealed Noel's allies, tech insiders shielding his contractor deals, still schemed, though his arrest had clipped their wings. The scholarship fund, Graham knew, was a strike against their world, a legacy for Amara and a shield for Zora. Ms. Patel called, confirming the adoption hearing's progress, but warned, "Some officials question your motives." Graham's resolve hardened. Zora was family, not a project. He glanced at her app, now shared with her class, earning grudging respect. Her brilliance, forged in Lena's library, was undeniable. Zora stood at her window, Lake Tahoe's depths glinting below. The scholarship, her mother's name in lights, felt like a bridge to a past she'd lost. The pen, Lena's gift, rested in her hand, its weight a promise. She called the mansion home now, the word tentative but real. Graham's belief, her own fire, had carved a place for her. Outside, the lake whispered, its secrets dormant, as a new family, forged in courage and trust, braced for a world that would test them anew. The lecture hall at UC Berkeley buzzed with restless energy, its tiered seats packed with students clutching laptops and dreams. At the front, Zora Williams, now 25, stood poised, her braids swept into an elegant knot. Her eyes, still sharp as the 10-year-old who'd saved Graham Sinclair from Lake Tahoe's icy grip, scanning the crowd. Her navy blazer and metal pen, Lena's gift from the library's STEM club, were the only echoes of her past in this polished present. 15 years had sculpted her into a tech prodigy and lecturer, one of Berkeley's youngest. Her course on equitable technology, a beacon for a generation hungry for change. Yet as she adjusted her notes, the weight of her journey pressed against her, a tapestry of loss, triumph, and a family forged in fire. Zora's voice, clear and commanding, cut through the chatter. "Technology isn't neutral," she began, projecting a slide of a flawed algorithm that once denied loans to marginalized communities. "It's shaped by us, our biases, our choices." The students leaned in, captivated, as she wove theory with stories. Her mother, Amara, whose code was stolen by Noel Carver, her own app at Tahoe Prep, dismissed as too advanced by a prejudiced teacher. Zora's lectures were more than lessons. They were battle cries, rooted in Lena's library teachings and Graham's unwavering belief. In the back row, Graham, now 57, hair silvered, watched with quiet pride, his retired life as Syntech's ex-CEO eclipsed by his role as Zora's father. Her path hadn't been smooth. At 13, Zora graduated from high school, her math tutoring app, born from Lena's STEM drills, earning her a scholarship to MIT. There she faced whispers, affirmative action kid, Graham's charity case. She silenced them with a thesis on tech ethics, graduating at 18, her metal pen scratching notes that reshaped industry standards. Stanford's PhD program followed, where she pioneered frameworks to strip bias from tech systems, her work sparking debates in boardrooms and journals. By 23, Berkeley called, offering a lectern to a woman whose brilliance, forged in a tarp shelter, defied every odd. Zora's rise was a testament to resilience, but also to those who'd seen her. Lena, Graham, even Helen, now a fierce ally. The Amara Scholarship Fund, launched by Graham a decade ago, was Zora's heartbeat. Named for her mother, whose stolen algorithm had fueled Noel's greed, it had empowered thousands of Black youth to pursue STEM, their innovations, apps, sensors, platforms, rippling through underserved communities. Zora ran the fund, her weekends spent mentoring kids who reminded her of herself, hungry, overlooked, unstoppable. One student, a 12-year-old coder from Oakland, had designed a water purification system, her eyes mirroring Zora's childhood fire. "You're my Lena," Zora told her, the metal pen in her hand, a bridge to the past. The fund's impact was seismic, a rebuke to Noel's world, where talent was buried for profit. Noel's shadow lingered, though faded. His conviction for attempted murder and fraud had dismantled Carver Dynamics, but his allies, tech barons shielding his deals, still whispered in Silicon Valley's corridors. Graham's investigations, post-retirement, uncovered their lingering influence. A quiet war Zora joined through her lectures, exposing tech's underbelly. Her Berkeley course, packed with diverse faces, was a front line, each student a soldier against inequity. Zora's metal pen, twirling during pauses, was her weapon, its scratches in her notebook, now digital, mapping a fairer future. That evening, Zora dined with Graham at a Berkeley cafe, its wooden tables a far cry from the Lakeview Bistro, where she'd overheard Noel's plot. Graham, relaxed in a sweater, raised a glass of wine. "To Amara," he said, his eyes warm. Zora clinked her water glass, her heart full. "And Lena," she added, recalling the librarian who'd armed her with knowledge. Their bond, father and daughter, was unyielding, forged through adoption battles, school biases, and a shared fight against Noel's legacy. Graham's mansion, once sterile, now brimmed with Zora's trophies, her sketches, their laughter, a home in every sense. Zora's lecture the next day was her boldest. She shared her story, the crash, the bomb, her pen short-circuiting Graham's seatbelt. "I was invisible," she said, voice steady, "but one man saw me. That's all it takes." The students erupted in applause, some teary, as Graham in the back nodded, his throat tight. Zora's words weren't just memoir. They were a challenge to see the unseen, to wield tech for justice. A student asked, "How do you keep going?" Zora twirled her pen, smiling. "I had no choice. Neither do you." Alone later, Zora stood on Berkeley's campus, the bay's lights glinting like stars. The pen rested in her pocket, its weight a reminder of Lena, Amara, Graham. Her journey, tarp to lectern, orphan to icon, was improbable yet inevitable. The Amara Fund's latest project, a tech hub for rural youth, bore her mother's spirit, its launch set for next month. Zora's lectures, streamed globally, sparked movements, her students seeding change. Yet doubt, her old companion whispered. Was it enough? She pushed it aside, her resolve steel, honed by years of proving herself. Graham joined her, his presence grounding. "You're changing the world," he said, voice soft. Zora shrugged, her pen twirling. "Just fixing what's broken," she replied, echoing her Tahoe prep defiance. The lake's memory, its icy grip, her cry of, "I will help you, it will be quick," lingered, a spark that had ignited this life. Noel's fall was justice, but Zora's rise was victory, her brilliance a light no darkness could dim. As they walked the campus humming with possibility, Zora felt Amara's pride, Lena's wisdom, Graham's love. The journey of 15 years wasn't over. It was a beginning, a promise to reshape a world that had once refused to see her. The Lake Tahoe shoreline shimmered under a late summer sun, its waters a mirror of memories, calm yet charged with the weight of 2 decades. Zora Williams, now 30, stood on the rocky bank where she'd once dragged Graham Sinclair from a sinking Tesla, her navy blazer replaced by a simple jacket, her braids loose, catching the breeze. At her side, Graham, 62, his silver hair glinting, leaned lightly on a cane. Not from injury now, but age's gentle nudge. 20 years had passed since Zora, a 10-year-old orphan, had shouted, "I will help you, it will be quick," and changed their lives. Today they returned to celebrate that moment and unveil Zora's boldest vision yet, Tahoe Spark, a global tech network to bring free STEM education to underserved communities. The metal pen, Lena's gift from the library's STEM club, rested in Zora's pocket, a talisman of her improbable ascent. The crash site, once a chaos of rain and wreckage, was serene now, the guardrail repaired, no trace of the Tesla or Noel Carver's bomb. Yet its echo lingered in Zora's bones, her dive into icy water, her pen short-circuiting the seatbelt, her defiance against a world that refused to see her. Graham's gaze, soft with pride, met hers. "This place started it all," he said, voice thick. Zora nodded, her fingers brushing the pen. "It started with Mom, too," she replied, thinking of Amara, whose stolen algorithm had fueled Noel's greed. The Amara Scholarship Fund, now a decade strong, had launched thousands of Black STEM students. But Tahoe Spark was Zora's vow to reach millions, a legacy rooted in Lena's lessons and Amara's dreams. They walked to a nearby pavilion where a small crowd, local leaders, students, reporters, gathered for the Tahoe Spark launch. Zora stepped to a podium, her presence commanding, honed by years lecturing at UC Berkeley. 20 years ago, I was invisible," she began, her voice steady, resonant. "A homeless kid, taught by a librarian named Lena to see knowledge as power. Today, Tahoe Spark brings that power to every child, everywhere, for free." She unveiled a tablet displaying the platform. Interactive STEM courses, open-source coding tools, accessible via low-cost devices. The crowd erupted, cameras flashing, as a young girl from a nearby reservation demoed a solar sensor she'd built using Tahoe Spark's beta. Zora's eyes shimmered. Lena's spark, alive again. Graham, beside her, held a small box, its contents a secret until now. As the crowd dispersed, he led Zora back to the shore. The lake's gentle lap a quiet chorus. "For you," he said, opening it. Inside was the metal pen, now engraved, "Zora, the future's spark." Zora's breath caught, her fingers tracing the words. "You kept it," she whispered, recalling the night she'd left it beside Noel's disarmed bomb. Graham smiled, his eyes crinkling. "It's yours, like this moment." Zora clutched it, the weight of 20 years, loss, triumph, and family, settling in her chest. She wasn't just Amara's daughter or Graham's ward. She was Zora, a force who'd rewritten the rules. Her journey flashed before her. MIT at 18, silencing doubters with her tech ethics thesis. Stanford's PhD, crafting frameworks to purge bias from technology. Berkeley's lecture halls where students saw her as a beacon. The Amara Fund had been her first strike against Noel's world, funding kids like her to shatter ceilings. Tahoe Spark was the next. A global network, her code ensuring no child was left behind. Yet the past lingered. Noel's allies, though diminished, still schemed in tech's shadows, their influence a faint echo of his greed. Zora's lectures, now streamed worldwide, were her weapon, exposing inequities, inspiring change. Her students, diverse and fierce, carried her torch, their projects reshaping communities. At a lakeside cafe that evening, Zora and Graham shared a quiet meal, the horizon ablaze with sunset. "You've outdone me," Graham said, his voice warm, teasing. Zora laughed, a sound once rare but now free. "You gave me the chance," she replied, her pen twirling. Their bond, forged in crisis, her cry in the storm, his fight for her adoption, was unbreakable. The mansion, once alien, was home, filled with Zora's sketches, Graham's laughter, and Helen's newfound warmth. Lena's memory lived in Zora's work, her STEM club the seed of a revolution. Amara's legacy, restored through the fun, thrived in every scholar Zora mentored. Zora's latest Berkeley lecture had gone viral, a clip of her recounting the Tahoe crash sparking global debate on tech's role in justice. One spark can change everything, she told her students, holding up the pen. Find yours. The words born from Lena's wisdom echoed in her now as she stood by the lake. Doubt, her old shadow, was gone, replaced by purpose. Tahoe Spark's launch wasn't just a project, it was a promise to Amara, to Lena, to every kid like her. Graham, watching her, saw the girl who'd saved him now saving the world. What's next? He asked, his cane tapping softly. Zora's eyes gleamed, fixed on the lake's horizon. More, she said, her voice a quiet fire. The pen, engraved in heavy, anchored her to the past but pointed to the future. She'd been invisible once, a girl the world ignored, but her spark, ignited by a crash, fueled by love, had blazed into a legacy. The lake, silent now, held no more secrets, only truths. Courage reshapes destinies, and one child's defiance can light the world. As they walked back hand in hand, Zora's resolve burned bright, her legacy enduring, a testament to a journey that began with a cry in the storm. Zora's journey, from a 10-year-old orphan defying a storm to a tech visionary lighting the world, shows us that courage can spark change against all odds. What moved you most about her story? Has someone's belief in you ever reshaped your path? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're eager to hear how Zora's spark ignites your own. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable adventure, for believing in a girl who dared to be seen. Stay with us for more stories of resilience and hope, where ordinary hearts create extraordinary legacies. Until next time, keep shining.